Welcome to the Gabrielle Lara Show, a podcast created for the new and aspiring entrepreneur who's navigating the messy middle part of their entrepreneurial journey. I'm your host, Gabrielle. I'm a niche expert and a sales coach who helps coaches like you find your niche and sell in a way that's authentic to you so that you can have a thriving business. I'll be inviting entrepreneurs from all walks of life onto these episodes to share their story of how they went from an aspiring entrepreneur to a CEO and all the messy parts they navigated in between so that you do not feel alone on this journey. Sit back, relax, and stay a while because you are more than welcome here. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Gabrielle Lara Show. I have my friend Lauren with me, who I cannot wait to dive into her story because I know she has a really interesting one. And we are just going to walk you guys through Lauren's story, right? Like how she got from where she was to where she is today and all the fun stuff she had to navigate in between so that hopefully she can make you feel more seen and heard as you're navigating your messy middle. So Lauren, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, yes, this is gonna be a fun one. I can already tell. So dive in. What is your story? Take the reins. Like, what is your story? What have you navigated to get where you are today?
Yeah, I loved how you brought up that all the fun things that she had to
Mhm.
go through because, normally it's not very fun.
Yep,
and,
exactly.
and when you're in the thick of it fun would not be the word that I would
Yeah,
describe.
yeah. Good old, yeah.
Yes, but definitely all super important. And, um, everyone's journey is different, but we can draw connections from everyone, right? So I'm hoping that my story will give someone a little bit of hope and encouragement and probably a good laugh or two
Yep,
along the way.
I'm sure. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So, the pinnacle, we can start there.
Mhm.
Um, I got laid off as the breadwinner, a couple months off of my first maternity leave, finding out I was pregnant and had no health insurance. All of this happened within like a span of 7 days.
Wow.
Um, yes. So that was kind of like big pivot turning point in my life and kind of where I had to have a little come to Jesus moment with myself, and the Lord and just kind of be like, all right, what the F is going on right now? Where are we going to go with this? So, I always knew I was going to be in business. Always, always from the time I was like uber little. You can probably thank my dad for that. I'm basically him with boobs, everyone tells me. Uh, so um, he's been in business his entire life. So we have very similar personalities. I've always had an interest in business, and I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But you know, I had the idea that I had to go to college and I had to earn a degree and I really wanted to climb a corporate ladder. I wanted to make a name for myself in a business. And, when I was settled and had a nice little nest egg and, had the family and the kids were in school, then I would be able to break off and, figure out what I wanted to do and start a business. That was the dream. That was a plan from like A1, day one. I was probably 13 years old, right? And so when all of that happened, um, the climax, the pinnacle of my tragedy, I was 26 years old, had been working for this company for 5 years, had just started a new territory, all this stuff. And it just like rug out from under me in a 3-minute phone conversation, right? Just like everything that I thought I wanted and had planned for, just absolutely gone. And I am someone, I'm sure you can kind of like tell by just my laying of story and plan here, that, I'm really good in crisis. Like, I could have been a fixer in another life. Like, I love conflict. I love crisis. I work really well in high stress situations. And this was like the first time I can ever remember in my life just totally like melting on the floor, like not knowing what in the world I was going to do, what we were going to do. We literally just bought a house like 6 weeks before all this happened. Now I don't have an income. Like, what in the world is going to happen? you know? And so, yes, very, very messy. I probably would not describe it as fun.
I was just gonna say, so the not so fun stuff.
Not, yes, definitely a piece of that not so fun part. But yeah, I probably left my pity pants on for about 3 days, gave myself
Mhm.
3 days to kind of like feel all the feels and get through it and have the conversations I needed to have and, vent and all that stuff before I was like, all right, we gotta get to work. We
It's
gotta
game
figure it
time.
out. We gotta
Yep.
find something. So, again, I had mentioned that I found out I was pregnant in the same week.
Yeah.
No health insurance. And of course, my 5-month-old daughter at the time had had her first fever.
Oh,
And so she's at like 104 degrees for like 2 straight days. And we're thinking we're going to have to take her to the emergency room with no insurance, not knowing what to do. For your first kid, like, you don't know anything,
mhm.
right? You're like, "Oh, what am I going to do? I don't know." She's coughing. She's the sniffles. Like, oh my gosh, is she going to die? Like, you're so over dramatic about everything. if
I'm
you
like nodding as if like I have kids, but I'm just like nodding because like I was like, that's exactly how I will be. I already know that.
Exactly. Yes. And if all of you can't tell, I have my pregnancy pillow wrapped around me. I am massive with my third child. So like I can laugh at myself for these things now. Yeah, you have no idea what you're doing with your first.
Right.
Um, so I'm like, all of this is happening at once, right? And it's just like so overwhelming, so extremely overwhelming. Um, but after those 3 days I kind of got into the grind mode. I had to go through and like redo my resume and all this stuff. And um kind of just like my quick little resume, I mean, I had been working in marketing and sales for almost a decade at this point, almost 10 years. My first internships and jobs and stuff, even in high school, were all centered around marketing. I have kind of that like creative edge strategy to my brain. So I also have multiple degrees. I have my BS in marketing and advertising, and I have my master's in project management. So I'm like, I've got a pretty stacked resume, right? Like, I have done a lot of work, a lot of projects, all this stuff. I'm like, this should be like piece of cake, easy. Get in, get a job quickly, get benefits because of I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to go on maternity leave in
Mhm.
9 months, and try and get in before I'm showing so that,
Yeah.
they're not like, oh, we're gonna hire a pregnant lady
Right.
who's gonna take a break in a few months. Um so I had submitted in less than 6 months over 150 resumes
Wow.
without hearing a single word back from anyone. 150, right? Like, this is a numbers game at this
Right.
point. So statistically, the fact that I didn't hear back from a single one was like statistically impossible, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have very kind of like niche skills. Like, there's no way that I wouldn't hear back from anyone. So it got to the point, uh we were pretty good savers, and I was able to work out a severance agreement, so we were okay for a few months. We were set. um and my at the time we had just moved back to my hometown, which was always the plan
Mhm.
once we started having kids. Um, and my husband's a school teacher. So it was at an odd time that he couldn't go in and get a job. So we were waiting for the beginning of the school year for him to start trying to get his foot in the door. So he was working as an hourly teacher's aide at this point, which is where that kind of breadwinner piece came in.
Mhm.
And so it got to the point where I needed to start doing something so that we could, continue to save, continue to have that budget for our new mortgage and everything else. So I started bartending 2 nights a week. I bartended until I was 8 months pregnant and then couldn't lean over coolers to get
Yeah,
beer out anymore, right? Like, I mean, you do what you gotta do. I'm
absolutely.
here. I have multiple degrees. I have so much knowledge, so much information. And it's like I'm bartending 2 days a week. Like
Mhm.
literally that's what I've done with my life at this point. And, things like that can kind of get you down in the dumps, right?
Yeah,
Like
because
it's kind of like
Mhm.
it's a huge ego hit too, but at the same time, you're like when you have a family, you do what you got to do. When you need to provide for yourself, when you have a dream, um, when there's something you want to accomplish, like there is no fault in getting your hands dirty and starting from the bottom and learning to work on your management skills and your conflict resolution as a bartender. Like there are
Yes, yes.
lots of things that you can work on while you're in a waiting period. So, again, still hadn't heard anything back. 8 months pregnant, 9 months pregnant. I have 2 weeks before I have my son, my second. Ryan had got a teaching position. So
Mhm.
this is um, August of 2018. So he gets a job the third week of August. The second week of September, I have Roman.
Mm.
So we had insurance for 2 weeks.
Yes, talk about perfect timing. Like that was in God's hands, and He was like, "I'm not gonna let you slip up, guys.
Oh
I'm not
yeah.
gonna let you slip up."
Yep, yep. So that saved us about a $4,000 bill right there.
Nice, nice.
Yes, I had to switch doctor's offices and everything too. So it was like I had one appointment with a brand new
Oh,
OBGYN, and I'm like, hey, hello, we're
you
gonna
ready to
deliver
do
this week.
this?
Um, so enjoyed about 3 weeks with him, and then I get a phone call from my aunt who uh in our little town, she's like the know everyone, worked for the newspaper, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. She was like, hey, this job listing just came up for our local city mission. They're looking for a marketing coordinator. um I reached out because I know the girl there, blah 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 blah, insert
Right.
lots of information that you don't need. um and they told me to tell you to call them. And I was like, oh my gosh, perfect.
Yeah.
Um, so I call, we get something set up, and I have an interview the next week. So I go in for this interview, and I had researched the lady who was there. She was the COO, so the operating officer for the city mission. And she had won the year previously the Athena Award in Pittsburgh. That's the area I'm in, and that's like a big business award for
Mm.
the entire area. And she's ex-military, just like you know like my kind of girl, right? Like business, no nonsense. I'm like, yes, let's get in. We're gonna come right to the chase. There's gonna be like all this is gonna be awesome. So I'm all excited when I go in, and we talk for a few minutes. It is a city mission, so her first couple questions were based around like my testimony and my story. And before she gets into like any of the business questions, right? Like background,
Mhm.
experience, any of this stuff, she's sitting there, and um, It was probably a good 90 seconds. She doesn't say anything. She's just like flipping back and forth in my like little 2-page resume. And she's just kind of like, kind of like going like this. And, I'm
It's
sitting there
like,
and I'm like, this is awesome. I'm not going to break first. I'm just going to sit here and, stare at her and wait for her to say something. Like, this is great. Like, come on, let's go.
yeah.
And so finally she stops and she like looks at me and she's like, why do you want to work here? And I was like, I need a job.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you're saying or asking this based on, experience and things like that, like I have no problem working from the bottom up, like
Mhm.
I have no problem with hard work. I've been bartending for the past, 8 months. Um, and she's like, I feel like I need to tell you something. And I was like, all right, what you got? She goes, I really think the Lord's telling me that you weren't created to push papers and lick stamps at a job like this, because that's what you're gonna do.
Mhm.
But if you want to start your own business, I'll be your mentor. I was like, and of
Wow.
course, I'm like, I'm like 3 weeks postpartum at this point. Like thinking about it still like gets me all emotional. Probably doesn't help that I'm uber hormonal and pregnant right now too. But I am like, I'm sitting there trying to like blink tears out of my eyes. Like, oh my gosh! I'm like, you did not just
Like
say this to
you
me.
knew. It's like you knew that that's what you needed to hear, and like literally God had sent her, your aunt. Like shout out to Auntie for that setup. Okay, you guys are like that. That was exactly what needed to happen. Wow.
Yeah, so I'm sitting there and I'm like, "Oh my gosh," like just like paralyzed for a hot second. And so the rest of the conversation, we sat there for like a half an hour. She kind of told me who her mentors were and who her story and how she got into this. Um and she actually, I've never heard of this happening in anyone else's job interviews, but she pulled $20 out of her purse and she gave it to me. And she was like, I want you to order this book and I want you to have it read by Friday. It was a Monday. I want you to have it read by Friday and call me by the end of the day and give me your answer, whether you want the job or whether you want me to mentor you.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh. So I got up and I'm like, can I hug you?
There you go. We
She's like,
love the consent. There you go.
I was like, I think this is going to be the start of a beautiful friendship. And she's like, I hope so. So I'm, running out the door after this. I can't call my husband because he's like in the middle of work right now.
Mhm.
Um, I had called my dad and I'm like, listen to this. And he was, kind of being a dad, he was like really excited, but he's like, listen, you haven't had a job for almost a year. He was like, maybe we should continue looking and then, yeah, use her as, you know, your mentor and as networking connection. So I was like, yeah, it's kind of smart. I still will, especially in the interim, blah, blah, blah. And didn't really like harsh my mellow or anything, right? But it was just kind of like pulling me back down to reality a little bit. And so still on cloud nine. I pick up the kids, I get home, and when Ryan gets home, I tell him the story.
Mhm.
Both kids are down for a nap at this point, so it was just us sitting on a couch. And, I was kind of thinking that he was going to say something along the lines that, my dad had, and um, that he would just be, excited that I had had a good experience, after having a crappy
Right, right. Having
month.
a very
Right.
fun year, right?
Yeah, and we had been reading this book and it was called Chase the Lion by Mark Batterson, and it's all
Mhm.
about like going after big dreams, right? Like that's like the
Aw,
whole premise of the book. And so
wow.
we had been reading that one together, and as soon as I finish my story, he looks at me and he was like, "Do you not realize that this is your 500-pound lion?" He was like, "You have to." He's like, you have to go all in. You have to like 100% do this. And I'm just like sitting on the couch bawling. I'm like, oh my God.
Right? Like, because it all makes sense. And it's like you were probably just so like starstruck almost through it that it's hard to even like connect the dots. And he like connected those dots for you.
Yeah, he connected the dots for me. And,
Wow.
we just kind of went from there. And like less than a month later, I had filed for my LLC and my EIN number, right? Like it was just right
Yes.
there. And I had no idea what I was doing. Like the whole process that Sally was her name, that Sally took me through was, start in consulting, create a
Mhm.
consulting business agency because you can literally do
Right.
anything you want. And if you don't know how to do something, you either outsource it or you learn how to do it. So,
Yeah.
like, take whatever you can. And I was like, okay, beginning, that's perfect. Marketing, social media, all this stuff that
Mhm.
I know and, like to have fun with. I'm like, oh, it's perfect, super easy. Well, of course, it wasn't very niche and you're just starting out and learning. So there was like, we're in what year 4, almost 3.5 of like my learning curve.
Yeah.
And I'm just figuring out kind of like where my lane and zone of genius and everything is right now. So
Mhm.
lots and lots of ups and downs, but I mean, it just how it all started and how it's starting to come together. Like there are still dots that are currently being connected now that I can see started in
Yeah.
that preparation period 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago,
Wow.
right? Like, if I would have had everything that I ever wanted 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been as fulfilling. I wouldn't be
Mhm.
where I am. I wouldn't have the knowledge. I wouldn't have the network or the people or the community, right? Like, and we can get so mad and frustrated and caught up in the I want it now. Why isn't it happening now? Why isn't it my time? Why did it happen in 6 weeks for them and it's been 6 years for me and it still hasn't happened? Like, I get caught in that all the time. We all do. But, you know, the timing for you is meant for you and not for somebody else. Someone else's blessing isn't meant for you, but use it as an encouragement that yours is coming, right?
Mhm.
So it has been a whirlwind.
I was just gonna say that sounds like such a whirlwind, but like now looking back on that, situation 4 years ago, does it, I don't want to say like does it make sense, but to a degree, like does it make sense? Like can you look back and be like, okay, now I can see why that happened. Like it prepared me for this.
Yes, you can absolutely like pick those out and pinpoint them and all this stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
I knew that there were certain things that I'm doing now that I wasn't prepared to do back
Mhm.
then, right?
Mhm.
Like that if I wanted it all now, if I had all of the knowledge and did it back then, it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have been aligned,
Right.
and it's kind of a tough realization to come to, right? It's like one of those pieces of self-awareness that you're like, oh man, like I really got to crap on myself a little bit,
Yeah.
for what I was doing and thinking and, you know, being um back then, but knowing now that there's growth in that and forward movement and different ways of thinking and different perspectives and, all of that, like it all comes into play. And I
Wow.
know a few years down the road, it's going to be the same exact thing. I'll be
Mhm.
sitting here thinking about this and
Right.
I'll be like, oh my gosh, okay, yeah, I still needed to work on X, Y, and Z area before I would be prepared to receive that blessing, right? So,
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So what would you say was just like the number one thing that just got you through the absolute thick of that? That just like got you out of bed in the morning and like you gave yourself those 3 days and you were like it's game time. Like what would you say was the number one thing that like motivated you almost to do that?
I don't know if it was so much a motivation, but just a realization that I could have stayed. I could have stayed in that pit.
Yeah.
It would have been easy.
Right.
It's very easy to have a victim mentality, and it's kind of safe to be there, and no one would fault you for being there, right? Like, yeah, I had a really crappy hand dealt to me. Yes, I could have, filed a lawsuit and I would have been in the right and like all this stuff, like I could have been shouting from the rooftops how awful that company was and how they did me wrong, and all this. I could have done that. It would have
Yeah.
been easy and no one would have said anything different to me, right? But mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I didn't want to stay in that pit. That
Mm,
wouldn't have been fun. And knowing me, like, I almost get obsessive with things. Like, when I have an idea, like, I want to take it and I want to run with it the second I have the idea, right? So I knew that if I got too comfortable in that pity state, in that victim mentality, I'd stay there way, way too long. And it wouldn't be good for my relationship. It
yeah.
wouldn't be good for my kids. It wouldn't be healthy for me. So it was just kind of like, all right, we got to make a shift. You got to do something different. So let's focus on something that you can control at this point. So that's a big thing for me. I always try to focus and spend my time on the controllables, right?
Mm,
Things that I'm able to change, things that I'm able to impact. And I do not spend time worrying or thinking or expending any type of energy on the what ifs,
yeah.
right? Like, it's huge waste of time, waste of my energy. I'd rather do it having fun, or having peace or joy or whatever, accomplishing something.
Oh my God. Yeah, just anything, but exactly. I can totally, you must just feel so proud of yourself. To like look back, like that's just like the whole time I'm thinking, like you must just feel so proud because you embodied like being a true leader, right? Like you had every excuse in the book to stay in bed, even till now, right? You had every single excuse in the book, but you didn't. You said like the show must go on, and if there's a will, Lord knows there's a way, and I'm gonna figure it out. And you did that. I think it's badass.
Yes, I it's hard to take credit for things sometimes, right? Like, I
Women
give them.
are worse at it. They're so bad, but give yourself, like Lauren, give yourself credit for that. So because that is so powerful. And I had a feeling that you weren't really taking credit for it, which is why I said that. But it's like, the unfortunate thing is as women, we're taught, if we start hyping ourselves up or really owning what we do bring to the table and what we have accomplished and what we have done, you were pregnant and you navigated all of that. You are 33 weeks pregnant right now doing this, like you're showing up and you're doing it. And I just, it's very powerful. It's very powerful. So I really hope that you take that and just like sit in that because you definitely deserve to, of
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
course. So tell us about your business now. So you said that you've been in business about 4 years.
Hmm.
And then, so have you pivoted? Have you changed niches? Like, tell us that story. I want to hear.
Oh, gosh, it shifted like every 6 months until about a year ago, right?
Oh,
Like, just trying to figure out what works, what doesn't.
and
And,
that's it.
now I'm in that zone where I'm trying to take a very active business model, being
Yeah.
a coach, and trying to make it much more passive because I know
Mm.
I like go into zombie mode those first 3 months postpartum.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Jeez.
Because
Yeah.
I like, my number one thing anyone will tell you is sleep. Like,
Yeah.
legit, I could still probably sleep 12 hours a night without like blinking, batting an eye. So sleep for me is like a major,
Yeah.
major priority. And clearly with a newborn, that doesn't happen a whole lot. So
Mm.
I know that I only have X amount of time to kind of like grind this out.
Mhm.
But yeah, so it started in consulting and marketing, marketing small businesses. And I had been in the nonprofit realm for my corporate job. So I wanted to help nonprofits with their free social strategies, right? Like how they can, use social media to their benefit and to bring more income and fundraising and things like that. Excuse me. So that's kind of where I started, and then found out that it felt a whole lot kind of like what I was doing in my other job, which I hated.
Yeah.
So then I was like, wait, isn't the point of this, to kind of like do what I like and what I love? So then I shifted a little more to like wholly social media and thinking, oh, I can manage. Like, I'm great at my own. I love it. I enjoy it.
Mhm.
Managing other people's social media was a pain.
Yeah. It really sound. It kind of sounds like a nightmare.
Oh my gosh. Like, you make one graphic and someone's like, yeah, no, can you change this? Can you do this? And it turns into like 7 hours of work for like a week's worth of content that I could have knocked out in like 20 minutes on my own, right? Like, it's like, oh, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
So then, oh gosh, what other pivots did I make? Um, I wanted to do like some motivational, kind of like speaking engagement type
Mhm.
things. And I just didn't have the time because I had kids who were 15 months apart and like uber young at the time. So it didn't necessarily translate because we weren't this was all pre-COVID, so not everything was done online through Zoom, like everything technologically accessible. So it was like I needed time to go out and I needed to find sitters and all this stuff, which was just like uber overwhelming. um and then just kind of like mixed back and forth, and
Mhm.
then I found a mastermind group that I like fell in love with, and I mean, about this. um and that kind of new network just kind of opened up my world a little bit more, right? Like seeing what was possible. And then directly after that, the world pretty much shuts down for like,
Yep.
2 weeks to flatten the curve turns into 2.5 years still going on and fighting about it. But it's the shift really kind of worked in my favor. Like one of the good things about disasters, right, is the people who figure it out, who do what they have to do, who kind of just like run with an idea,
Mhm.
tend to be the trendsetters and the ones that figure it out and the ones that are like first on the scene type thing. And for me, it was like an uber eye opener. Like, the world is my oyster at this point, right? Like, you can do anything, you can reach anyone. It's funny, Ryan and I, we got so bored at home, right?
Mhm.
Because everyone had to quarantine, stay inside, blah, 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 whatever. We started a TikTok account. We
Oh,
each started TikTok accounts, and, we grew like massive followings. I say massive, it's all relative. Like,
mm-mm.
we each got 20 plus thousand followers because we did dumb dances. Like, literally, we'd have a couple beers at night. Like, that would be like our chill time. We'd have a couple beers and we'd make idiots of ourselves on
That's so
social
fun.
media. Like,
It sounds like the best like Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday night ever. Once the
right?
kids go to bed, the parents come out to play.
It's like what we did, and we found so much joy in it, and we made so many connections, and it was fun. And we realized that we could use those platforms to bring joy,
Mhm.
which was something that I kind of always wanted to do with like that motivation piece and that speaking
Yeah.
piece. Like, I can do that on a platform, and I can make someone smile, or I can start up a conversation. And so that turned into influencing a little bit. I'm still working on that because that's like one of the good
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah.
passive streams and parts right now.
Yeah.
um but then turned into coaching connections, and I started like a Bible shit or a Bible study membership. And we have like a little networking group, and it's just everything is
Mhm.
coming together, like all of the pieces that I enjoyed that seemed so separate, like the marketing, the helping small businesses, the helping nonprofits, the wanting to speak, the wanting to teach mindset and all this stuff. Like it's all literally just kind of like coming together in these little tiny pieces of business that somehow fit
Yeah,
together now, right?
exactly.
So
Whatever is meant for you will not pass you by.
nope.
As much as we try to fight it and ignore it, it will not pass you by. And sometimes it slaps you right in the face in the best way possible. And like,
Mhm.
what I heard there too is like you're multi-passionate, right? Like there's
Mhm.
different things that you want to do, and like you can make it work. I feel like just being a niche expert and helping people with this all the time is they think niche is like one thing, and it's like at times it can be, but it really doesn't have to be. Like you can be
Mhm.
multi-passionate and make it work, especially this day and age.
Yes,
Own that.
absolutely.
And Lauren's a perfect example. Do you notice that I say your name funny? You must say Lauren.
Lauren.
You say Lauren too? Okay, you're from the
Lauren.
East Coast. That's why,
Yeah,
right? You're Pittsburgh. Okay.
Pittsburgh.
Whenever, like, my middle name's Lara, and everyone's like, Laura? I'm
Laura.
like, Lara.
No.
Oh my gosh. So I have two questions left that I want to ask you. So, number one is, what is one thing that you wish you could go back and tell yourself at the start of your business?
Oh gosh. The one thing probably to do it messy,
Yeah.
right? Like just
Hmm.
get it done. Get out there, throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks.
Yep.
I, especially in the beginning, I got really into like, oh, I need to look pretty. Everything needs to be set. I need to kind of have everything packaged and nice and perfect before I'll put it out there. And that's like the kiss of death to anyone starting a business or a side hustle or whatever it is that you want to do, a hobby, right? Like perfection doesn't exist and it's never going to exist. So getting caught in that, uber melancholy cycle is like, oh man. Yeah, that would absolutely be the number one thing I would say. Do that ish messy and figure out what you like because you're also not going to figure out what you like or what people want from you if you're only putting out like one teeny tiny thing at a time and like kind of questioning whether it's right and waiting for other people's affirmation, for
Hmm.
you to go out and do it, right?
Oh, that's so
So,
good.
yeah.
Do it messy. Everyone listening, I know a lot of you guys listening are new entrepreneurs. You're getting your businesses off the ground. Like, take note of that. Write that down in your phone. Do it messy. Just do it. You never know. Like, you're probably dipping your toe in the shallow end right now. Do that cannonball. Do
Mhm.
that cannonball.
Yep.
So, how can people get in touch with you? How can they work with you? And where can they find you?
Yes. So I am on Instagram at the Lauren Highland. That has the link in my bio for all of my good stuff. I have a Bible study membership, the Bold Academy. There you have all of that lion aspect coming in again and connecting the dots. And I also do coaching for entrepreneurs and small businesses looking to create more passive streams of income and just kind of like get your foundations and everything set up, right? Um, I know this is like a my story podcast, but kind of what you were saying about the multi-passionate
Yeah.
um, entrepreneurs and such. It's been so helpful for me, especially being a mom. I know not everyone's going to be a mom. I know not everyone's going to be in a relationship, but it was so, so important for me to sit down with my husband and we kind of set up a family creed, which is like a mission statement and our values. And I made sure that what was in line with our family values was what was in line with my business values,
Yes.
right? Because you don't want to feel like you're being pulled in multiple directions, right? Like you don't want a peaceful and a joyful family, right? Those being your core values, and then having a hustling and grinding and scaling and you know make $1 million mindset in your business, because you're always going to feel like you're being pulled in two separate directions, right? So for me at least, my family mission statement and my family core values are exactly my business core values and my business mission statement, right? So everything comes together. There's crossover in everything. And that's just,
I love
I mean,
that.
that's how you do it. That's how you get through the day, right?
I love how you highlighted that because it's just that's it. Like you can make it work. You can make it work. And you
Mhm.
are a complete testament to that. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, Lauren. Did you enjoy today's episode? If so, I would be super appreciative if you left a review and a rating and shared this with a friend so that I can continue to bring you value every single week. I'll see you next time.